I want you to imagine coming home after a long day at work. You're tired. You're thinking about dinner. Maybe you're thinking about nothing at all. You walk into your kitchen, and your wife is standing there, smiling at you. Same smile she's had for 8 years. Same eyes. Same woman you married. Now imagine that 2 hours later, you find out that woman never actually existed. That's not a metaphor. That's my life. That's what happened to me. My name is Jake. I was married for 8 years to a woman I thought I knew better than anyone on this planet. I knew how she took her coffee. I knew which side of the bed she slept on. I knew her laugh, her fears, her favorite movie. What I didn't know was that for the last 2 years of our marriage, she was living a completely separate life. A life I knew nothing about. A life that had no room for me in it. And the worst part? I had no idea. None. Zero. I was the last person to find out. This is my story. And I'm telling it because I know someone watching this right now is going through the same thing, or something close to it. And they need to hear that they're not crazy. They're not weak, and they will survive this. Let's start from the beginning. To understand how badly this broke me, you need to understand what we had, or at least what I thought we had, because from the outside, we were the couple that other people pointed to. The ones who still held hands at dinner after 5 years. The ones who actually liked each other. And that's not me being arrogant. That's just genuinely what people told us. I met Sarah in the fall of 2014. We were both at a mutual friend's housewarming party in Chicago. I remember the exact moment I saw her. She was standing by the window, laughing at something someone said, and I just stopped. I know that sounds like something out of a movie, but that's genuinely what happened. Time didn't slow down or anything dramatic like that. I just looked at her and thought, I need to talk to that woman. I wasn't even supposed to be there that night. My buddy called me last minute, said, just come, it'll be fun. I almost said no. I was tired. I had work the next morning. I was genuinely about to text him, maybe next time. But something told me to go. Some stupid, random instinct. And I listened to it. We talked for 3 hours straight that night. About everything. Music, travel, family. The kind of stuff you don't usually get into with someone you just met. She was sharp, funny, confident in a way that wasn't arrogant, just real. Like she knew exactly who she was and didn't need anyone to confirm it. I found that incredibly attractive. I drove home at 2 a.m. thinking, that's the woman I'm going to marry. I remember saying it out loud in the car, to nobody. Just me and that thought, and the empty highway. And I was right. 3 years later, in June of 2017, we got married in a small ceremony outside the city. Just close family and friends. Nothing over the top. Sarah didn't want a big wedding. She said all that mattered was the people in the room. I loved that about her. No drama, no performance, just us, the people we loved, and a promise. Our first apartment was tiny, like embarrassingly small. We had a kitchen that was basically a hallway and a living room where you could touch both walls if you stretched your arms out. We used to joke that if we ever had a real argument, we'd have nowhere to storm off to. But we were happy. Genuinely happy. We'd cook dinner together every night. Watch movies. Stay up too late talking about nothing. Normal stuff. Beautiful stuff. By 2019, we bought a house. A real house. Backyard. 2-car garage. The whole thing. We talked about kids. We talked about where we wanted to retire one day. We had a plan. A real, concrete, shared plan for our entire lives. And it felt good. It felt solid. The kind of solid you don't question. Sarah had a great job. Marketing director at a mid-sized tech company downtown. She worked hard. Long hours sometimes, but I always respected that about her. I never questioned it. Why would I? She'd always been driven and ambitious. That was one of the things I loved most about her from the very beginning. And me, I was happy. Not in some naive, oblivious way. I mean genuinely, deeply content. I had a woman I loved, a home we built together, a future that felt real and close and ours. I used to think about guys who complained about their marriages, and honestly, I felt sorry for them, because I had something different, something better. I was absolutely sure of it. That certainty, that absolute, unshakable certainty, is exactly what made what came next so completely devastating. Because here's the thing, nobody tells you about betrayal. It doesn't just hurt in the moment, it reaches back in time. It takes every good memory you have and puts a question mark on it. Every vacation, every birthday, every quiet Sunday morning lying in bed. Suddenly, you're not sure what was real and what was performance, what was love and what was just a lie wearing love's face. That's the cruelest part. It doesn't just destroy your future, it destroys your past too. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because in 2019, when we moved into that house, I had no idea any of this was coming. I was just a man who thought he'd figured out the most important thing in life. I thought I'd married my best friend. I was wrong. Looking back now, and I've spent a lot of time looking back, the signs were there. They were always there. I just had 1,000 reasons not to see them. It started small, the way it always does. Sometime in early 2021, Sarah started coming home later than usual. At first it was once a week, then twice. Then it became so normal that I stopped noticing. She always had an explanation. Big project, client dinner, team meeting that ran long, and every explanation made complete sense, because I knew how her job worked. I knew the industry was demanding. I never pushed back. Then came the phone. I don't know exactly when it happened, but at some point Sarah's phone became off limits. Not in an obvious way. She didn't announce it, didn't make a rule about it. It was more subtle than that. She'd always have it face down on the table. She'd take it with her to the bathroom. If I walked into a room while she was texting, she'd flip it over or slide it into her pocket in one smooth motion. Natural. Practiced. I noticed. Of course I noticed. But every time I brought it up, and I did bring it up more than once, she had an answer ready. It's work stuff, babe. Confidential client information. You know I can't just leave that sitting around. And I believed her. Because why wouldn't I? She'd never given me a reason not to. That's the thing about gaslighting that nobody really prepares you for. It's not always loud and aggressive. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just someone you love looking you in the eyes and speaking with complete calm, and your own brain doing the rest of the work for them. You don't even realize it's happening. You just slowly start to trust your own instincts less and less. There were other things. Small things that I filed away without really processing them. She started going to the gym, which was fine, great even, except she'd never been a gym person in 8 years of knowing her. Suddenly she was going 4 times a week, always in the evening, always for about 2 hours. She bought new workout clothes, started caring more about how she looked, started wearing perfume on random Tuesday nights. I told myself she was just getting into a healthy routine. I was proud of her, actually. God, I was proud of her. There was a weekend in March of 2021 when she said she was going to visit her college roommate in Minneapolis. 2 nights away. She'd done trips like that before. Not often, but it wasn't unusual. I helped her pack. I drove her to the airport. I kissed her goodbye at the departures entrance and told her to have fun. I texted her when I thought she landed. She texted back. Said the flight was fine. Said she missed me already. I remember smiling at that message. I found out later she never went to Minneapolis. But the moment that should have broken through, the moment I look back on and want to shake myself, was a dinner we had in April. We were at our favorite restaurant, the Italian place we used to go to for anniversaries. And something was just off. She was distracted, checking her phone under the table, laughing a little too hard at nothing, not really present. Like she was physically sitting across from me, but her mind was somewhere else entirely, with someone else entirely. And there was this one moment, right in the middle of dinner, where she looked at me across the table, and I saw something in her eyes that I couldn't name at the time. I can name it now. It was guilt. But that night I drove us home, poured us both a glass of wine, and told myself I was overthinking it. Told myself every marriage goes through phases. Told myself I was lucky to have her. Told myself I was being paranoid and insecure, and that I needed to just relax. I went to bed that night completely at peace. One of the last times I ever would. It was a Wednesday night in November, 2022. I remember the date exactly, November 9th. I'll remember it for the rest of my life. Sarah had been acting strange all week. Quieter than usual, distracted. She'd come home, eat dinner, disappear into her phone. I told myself it was work stress. There was always some deadline, some client, some crisis at the office. I'd learned not to push. I'd learned to give her space when she needed it. That night she said she was going to take a bath. She grabbed her phone, like always, and headed upstairs. I was in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner. Normal Wednesday night. Nothing unusual. Except she forgot her charger. Her phone charger was sitting on the kitchen counter, and about 10 minutes after she went upstairs, her phone buzzed. Once, twice, then a third time. I wasn't going to look. I genuinely wasn't. I picked it up to bring it upstairs to her, and the screen lit up in my hand. The name on the screen was Ryan. I didn't know any Ryan. In 8 years of marriage, I had never once heard her mention anyone named Ryan. Not a coworker, not a friend, not a distant acquaintance. Nobody. And the preview of the message on the screen. Pause, long pause. I'm not going to read it out loud. But I'll tell you this. There was absolutely no way to misinterpret what it said. None. It wasn't ambiguous. It wasn't something that could be explained away. It was specific, and it was intimate, and it was not written by someone who was just a friend. I stood there in my kitchen for what felt like a very long time. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I was just still. Like my body didn't know what to do with the information my brain had just received. Like every system just paused. And then I heard the water upstairs turn off. She came downstairs about 5 minutes later in her robe, hair wrapped in a towel. She walked into the kitchen and she saw me standing there, holding her phone. And I watched her face go through about 4 different expressions in about 2 seconds. Surprise, recognition, calculation, and then nothing. A blank, controlled nothing. She didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. We just looked at each other across the kitchen for what felt like forever. Finally, I said one word. Just one. Ryan. She closed her eyes. And in that moment, in the half second before she opened them again, I think some part of me was still hoping for an explanation. Still hoping she'd say something that would make this make sense. A work contact. An old friend. Anything. But when she opened her eyes, she just said, "Jake, sit down." And I knew. Right then. I knew everything. She told me his name was Ryan Callahan, that they worked together, that it had started about 8 months ago, that it was never supposed to get serious, that she was sorry, that she didn't know how it happened. All the things people say when they get caught. All the words that are supposed to mean something, but land completely hollow, because the only thing you can actually hear is the sound of 8 years shattering. I asked her one question. The only question that mattered to me in that moment. Did you love him? She didn't answer right away. And that pause, that 3-second pause, told me everything I needed to know. "I don't know," she said. "I think I might." I stood up. I grabbed my keys. I walked out the front door without a coat, even though it was November and freezing cold outside. I got in my car and I drove. I don't even remember where I drove. I just drove until I couldn't see the road anymore. Because I was crying. For the first time that night, I was crying. And I didn't stop for a very long time. I drove for about 2 hours that night. Just highways and dark streets and the kind of silence that feels like it has weight to it. I didn't call anyone, didn't text anyone. I just drove. Eventually, I pulled into a parking lot outside a 24-hour diner somewhere on the north side of the city. I sat in the car for a long time. And then I went inside, ordered coffee I didn't drink, and stared at the table for another hour. I kept waiting to feel something clear. Rage, maybe, or grief. Something with edges. But it wasn't like that. It was more like static. Like every emotion was happening at the same time and canceling each other out. I just felt completely hollow. I got home around 2 in the morning. Sarah was sitting on the couch. She hadn't gone to bed. She was just sitting there in the dark, still in her robe, hands in her lap. She looked up when I walked in. Neither of us said anything for a moment, and then I sat down in the chair across from her. Not next to her, across from her. And I said, "I need you to tell me everything. All of it. No more half-truths. No more damage control. Everything." And she did. Or at least, I think she did. I'll never know for certain how much was the full truth, and how much was still a managed version of it. But she talked for a long time. And I listened. His name was Ryan Callahan. They'd worked together for about 3 years. It started as a friendship. Lunches, work trips, late nights at the office. And then sometime in early 2022, it became something else. She said it happened gradually, that she didn't plan it, that she kept telling herself it wasn't serious. I asked her how long. She said 8 months. I found out later it was closer to 18. I asked her if she had feelings for him. She looked at her hands and said she didn't know. I asked her if she had ever thought about leaving me for him. Another long pause. Then, "I don't know. Maybe. I don't know." Every "I don't know" felt like a separate punch. I asked her why. The most basic, unanswerable question. But I needed to ask it. Why? Why me? Why our marriage? Why 8 years of building something together wasn't enough to make her stop? She said she felt disconnected, that she'd been feeling lonely for a long time, that she didn't know how to talk to me about it, that Ryan made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. I want to be honest with you about what that did to me, because my first reaction wasn't anger. It was something worse. It was shame. This immediate, crushing wave of shame. Like somehow I had failed her. Like if I'd just been better, paid more attention, been more present, this wouldn't have happened. I carried that feeling for a long time. Too long. I know now it was wrong. But in that moment, at 2 in the morning on that couch, I believed it completely. I asked her one more question, the one I'd been building toward the whole conversation. "Do you want to save this marriage?" She was quiet for a long time, and then she said, "I don't know if I'm the same person who married you. I don't know if I want the same things anymore." That was the moment I knew it was over. Not the messages on the phone. Not the confession. That sentence. That one honest, devastating sentence. I slept in the guest room that night. I lay there on top of the covers, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling, and I thought about every version of the future I'd imagined for us. The kids, the vacations, the growing old together. And I watched all of it just quietly disappear. There was no screaming, no throwing things, no dramatic movie moment. Just 2 people in a house that suddenly felt like it belonged to strangers. In the morning, I called a divorce attorney. Not because I'd given up without trying, but because somewhere between that parking lot and that couch and that ceiling, I realized that you cannot fight for a marriage alone. You cannot love someone back into choosing you. And you cannot build a future with someone who is still deciding whether they want one with you. I deserved someone who was sure, and she wasn't. So I made the only decision I had left. Aftermath. Тихий, рефлексивний тон. Повільна музика на фоні. The divorce took 9 months, which is both a long time and not nearly enough time to dismantle 8 years of a shared life. There's a version of this story where I tell you I handled it with grace, where I stayed calm, stayed focused, kept it together. But that wouldn't be honest. And if there's one thing I promised myself when I started this channel, it's that I'd always be honest with you. The first month was the worst. I was still living in the house while we figured out logistics. Sarah had moved into a hotel initially, then into an apartment across town. But the house, our house, was still full of her. Her things, her smell, her handwriting on the grocery list still stuck to the fridge. I couldn't bring myself to take it down for weeks. I wasn't sleeping, maybe 3, 4 hours a night. I'd lie in bed and my brain would just run, replaying conversations, recalculating timelines, trying to figure out which memories were real and which were lies. That's something nobody warns you about. The obsessive mental audit of your entire relationship. Going back through years of moments and trying to figure out what was genuine and what was performance. I lost about 15 pounds in 2 months. Not intentionally. I just forgot to eat. My friends would invite me out, and I'd say yes, and then just not go. I'd sit in my car in the driveway and not be able to make myself move. My best friend Marcus was the one who finally showed up at my door one Saturday morning and refused to leave. He just came in, made coffee, sat down, and said, "Talk." And I did. For about 4 hours. I told him everything. And something about saying it all out loud, not in my own head for the 100th time, but actually out loud to another person, cracked something open. I cried in a way I hadn't let myself cry since that first night. Marcus didn't try to fix it, didn't offer advice, didn't say, "You're better off without her," or "There are other women out there." He just sat there and listened, and that was exactly what I needed. I started therapy in January, about 6 weeks after everything came out. I want to be really clear about this part. Therapy saved me, not in a dramatic way. Not overnight. But my therapist helped me understand something that I couldn't see from inside the pain. That what happened was not a reflection of my worth as a person or a partner. That betrayal is about the person who betrays, not the person who gets betrayed. That sounds simple. It is not simple when you're living it. The divorce was finalized in August of 2023. We split the house, split the assets, went our separate ways. There were no kids involved, which I'm both relieved about and, in a strange way, sad about. Relieved because it kept things cleaner. Sad because I'd wanted them. We'd planned for them. Sarah and Ryan are still together, as far as I know. I don't follow her on anything. I don't ask mutual friends. I made a decision early on that knowing details about her life would only hurt me and help nobody. So I just don't know. And I've made peace with not knowing. The house sold in September. Walking through it one last time before closing. That was hard. Standing in that kitchen where everything fell apart. Standing in the backyard where we used to have people over in the summer. I let myself feel it. All of it. And then I walked out and didn't look back. I moved into an apartment on the west side. Small place. Just me. And for the first few weeks, it felt suffocating. The quiet, the space, the absence of another person's presence. I'd never lived alone as an adult. I didn't know how. But slowly, very slowly, something shifted. The quiet started to feel less like emptiness and more like peace. I started cooking again, started running in the mornings, started calling my parents more, started showing up for my own life in a way I hadn't in a long time. I won't pretend I'm fully healed. I don't think that's how it works. There are still nights when it hits me out of nowhere. A song, a smell, a random Tuesday night that feels too quiet. There are still moments when the anger comes back sharp and sudden. But I'm here. I got through it. And most days, I'm genuinely okay. And I want you to know that if you're in the middle of it right now, if you're in that parking lot at 2 in the morning, not knowing how to go home, it does get better. Not all at once. Not on a schedule. But it gets better. I've thought a lot about what I actually learned from all of this. Not the generic stuff. Not trust your gut. And communication is key. I mean the real things. The hard things. The things I wish someone had told me before any of this happened. So that's what this section is. No filter. Just what I know now that I didn't know then. The first thing, and this one took me a long time to accept, is that you cannot love someone into being faithful. I was a good husband. I'm not saying that to make myself look good. I'm saying it because it's true, and because it matters. I was present. I was loving. I was supportive. I showed up. And it still happened. Because her choices were never about what I did or didn't do. They were about who she was and what she decided. That's not my responsibility. It was never my responsibility. For months, I walked around carrying this invisible weight. This constant low-level belief that if I'd just been more attentive, more interesting, more something, she wouldn't have strayed. My therapist helped me see how toxic that thinking was. Not just wrong, toxic. Because it meant I was taking ownership of someone else's moral failure. And that's not accountability. That's self-punishment dressed up as accountability. The second thing I learned is about red flags. Specifically, why we ignore them. I ignored a lot of red flags. I've already told you about them. The phone, the late nights, the gym, the trip that never happened. And people always ask, how do you miss that? How do you not see it? Here's the honest answer. You see it. You just don't want it to mean what it means. Because the alternative, that the person you love and trust most in the world is lying to you, is so painful, so destabilizing, that your brain will work incredibly hard to find any other explanation, any other story, something that lets you keep your world intact. We are wired to protect the things we love. Sometimes that protection turns into denial. And denial, when it goes on long enough, starts to feel like trust. The third thing, and this one is specifically for the men watching this, though it applies to everyone, is that grief after betrayal is real, and it is valid, and you are allowed to fall apart. There is so much pressure on men to absorb pain quietly, to be stoic, to move on fast, hit the gym, get back out there. And I did some of that. But the most important thing I did was let myself actually grieve. I cried. I talked. I sat with the pain instead of running from it. And that, not the gym, not the distraction, not the moving on, that is what actually healed me. You cannot shortcut grief. You can only go through it. The fourth thing I learned is about identity. Specifically, how much of my identity had become wrapped up in being Sarah's husband, in being part of that couple, in that shared future we'd built together. And when it all collapsed, I didn't just lose her. I lost the version of myself that existed inside that relationship. Rebuilding that, figuring out who Jake is without the marriage, without the house, without the plan, that was its own separate process. Harder in some ways than the grief itself, because grief has a shape. Identity work is just open, uncertain. You're starting from scratch in your own life. But here's what I found on the other side of that process. I actually like who I'm becoming. I know myself better now than I ever did inside that marriage. I know what I need, what I won't accept, what genuinely matters to me. That clarity, painful as it was to earn, is something I wouldn't trade. And the last thing, the most important thing. You will be okay. I know that sounds hollow when you're in the middle of it. I know it sounds like something people say because they don't know what else to say. But I'm not saying it to be nice. I'm saying it because I lived it. Because I sat in that parking lot at 2 in the morning, completely destroyed, and I genuinely did not believe I would ever feel normal again. And here I am, talking to you. Okay, more than okay. It doesn't happen all at once. It doesn't happen on a schedule. But it happens. You just have to let it.